Biden and his team work to try to shift the national focus back to the plethora of domestic issues, there are growing questions about that chaotic nature of the Afghanistan withdrawal and the Americans and allies who say they've been left behind. Let's bring in tonight's Dream Team panel, Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall and RNC committee woman for California, Harmeet Dillon. Welcome back to both of you.
Hi, Shannon.
Okay, so there are a lot of folks out there who are not impressed with how the president is currently performing. The Washington Post, ABC News polling last week that did include now what's happened in Afghanistan says this. He's shifted now in September to approval at 44%, disapproval at 51%. Harmeet, will a shift to the domestic improve those numbers?
Well, I don't think so, Shannon. As bad as this Afghan crisis of Joe Biden's making has been, things are not looking that great here in America when he shifts his focus here. We have record unemployment. We have the policies of this administration making it harder for employers like me and others to fill those jobs. We have record inflation, highest in the last decade. The cost of production is rising in this country. We've had 235,000 people employed, which is 500,000 short of what was expected. And we have hundreds of thousands of people being apprehended at the border, over 1 million since this administration started. So we are at a crisis mode wherever you turn. And I don't think that focusing on those is going to make Americans who are either desperate to fill jobs, trying to find a job, trying to pay for gas, going to make them feel any better with this bad situation in our country.
And as part of that is this $3.5 trillion spending bill that's going to be pushed through. The Wall Street Journal notes that will not be easy for him to get done. It says to move forward with his agenda, the president will need to navigate tripwires in a narrowly divided Congress. Senator Joe Manchin, an influential moderate vote, he's a Democrat, has injected fresh uncertainty into the future of the Democrats' $3.5 trillion spending plan with calls for a timeout on the effort. And Leslie, more reporting tonight that he's not willing to go anywhere near that number.
Well, if you remember, Shannon, with infrastructure, you could have replaced infrastructure and this legislation word for word. Joe Manchin wasn't going to be for it. Democrats weren't going to be united. The progressives weren't going to go for any kind of money being cut. Republicans weren't going to work with Democrats. Joe Biden couldn't unite and have bipartisanship. And that all did happen. And I'm actually confident it will this time. Remember, whatever number you start with, and I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican or what piece of legislation, it's not where you end. And that's why they have a negotiation. And that's why they usually start higher. You ask for the, you aim for the moon to get a few stars or vice versa. And that's what I think will happen here. And that's one thing and one of the strengths of the president, that he is able to unite the both parties to be able to work together. And I think that he can do that because he's done.
Any major piece of legislation, Leslie, you know, that they've passed so far has been without any Republican votes. There has been, he's talked about bipartisanship, and we were promised that. It hasn't happened in
Infrastructure
practice.
Had Republican votes. Infrastructure had Republican votes, absolutely. Well, you know what? Now, in this divided climate, one is certainly one more than you have, but you didn't have one more. You had over a dozen Republicans that were on board with this, and so I don't. And certainly Joe Manchin. Look, some people may feel that that D isn't as big on his blue cape, but he is a Democrat. He does want what's best for the party, best for the people. And by the way, the people in his constituency, in his state of West Virginia, actually are thumbs up on this. If you look at the polls.
I mean, they do like him, and Harmeet, in a lot of ways it's because he pushes back. But listen, you've got the left of the Democratic Party saying we need to go even further. Here's Senator Amy Klobuchar, who, by the way, wants Justice Stephen Breyer to retire. And there are a number of Democrats who want the court packed. They don't like these latest decisions coming from them, specifically with the Texas abortion law, which wasn't a decision on the merits, but was a procedural decision. She says this: my solution, which is my solution to voting rights and so many other things, including climate change, where one side of the country is in flames, the other side of the country is flooded, with people submerged in their cars. I believe we should abolish the filibuster. She says that's how they're going to solve all these issues on measures that President Biden can't currently get moving. Harmeet?
That's magical thinking on the part of Klobuchar. I don't know what she's thinking, that any type of legislation is going to be able to change the climate or accomplish anything in our lifetimes. What this is another attempt to shift the focus into something that Democrats think is really going to help them at the polls. But in fact, again, most Americans are struggling with things like filling up their gas tank. Inflation is real. It doesn't matter to the rich people in Congress, perhaps, but it matters to the average man and woman. And so I think that, Joe Manchin isn't doing anything out of principle here. He's doing what he does, and he's expressing his doubts because he knows exactly how the people at home are going to vote against him if he goes too far with this radical agenda, which is out of step with much of America. And so, again, I think the Democrats who are leading their party down a very dangerous path, and the polls are looking pretty good for Republicans in the midterms as a result of that. If they were smart, and if I were advising Democrats, I would advise them to pump the brakes on this radical agenda and focusing on fixing what's wrong with America right now in the wake of COVID as we try to recover, not making things worse and dividing us more, which is the type of rhetoric that we're hearing out of Congress.
Yeah, and very quickly, before they get to any of that domestic agenda, we do still have this issue in Afghanistan of people who've been left behind, which the White House admits there are Americans still there in Afghanistan. Senator Dick Blumenthal, who is a Democrat, there is no mistaking that, says this: I expect the White House and State Department to do everything in their power, absolutely everything, to make this happen, meaning get people out. These are American citizens and Afghans who risked everything for our country. We cannot leave them behind. Leslie, there are a number of Democrats who are raising this issue loudly and regularly with this White House. A quick final comment from you on that.
I would agree with them, and I amongst them. I mean, I may not be a senator, but, I'm certainly a voice within the Democratic Party. And, as a Democrat, I said before that we shouldn't have left until we got every American that wants to come home. I have spoken to family members that are Americans that want to stay in Afghanistan until their family members who are not Americans are able to come home, and they may not have assisted us, for example, as others had in Afghanistan. But now that we have left, absolutely, that needs to be a priority. But this and every administration can and should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We've got a lot on our plates, not just getting those people home, which certainly is a priority, but COVID and getting those ICUs down is a priority. Hurricane and getting energy back and electricity back to places in Louisiana and in the Northeast that have been hit hard by these storms or fires in California.
Yeah. Okay. Senator Leslie Marshall, will it happen one day? Harmeet, that's your state out there. You guys will have to face off, and we'll see what happens. Harmeet and Leslie, thank you both.
Thanks, Shannon.